In the previous video, I demonstrated practical, mundane, everyday type readings with the Spirit Keepers Tarot. In this video, I'm going to talk about the occult practitioner's relationship with the SKT. If I'm going to be approaching the Spirit Keepers Tarot deck, or just to be fair, any type of ritual work at all, if I'm coming forth as an occult practitioner for some form of operation or practice, if I'm stepping forward as a priestess, very first thing I will do is I will make sure I am clean head to toe, and I will also anoint myself with a type of anointing oil where the purpose is purification. I feel like in past orientation series for the Spirit Keepers Tarot, I've talked a lot about ritual work with the Spirit Keepers Tarot deck. I've demonstrated different types of readings where you are approaching the deck with the intention of invocation or evocation. And so I don't want to be too redundant and repeat myself. I do believe you can watch those videos and follow along with the Revelation edition, even if in the video I'm literally using the black and white first edition or the Vitruvian. So I do encourage you to revisit some of those older videos on ritual work with the tarot pathworking, astral projection, any of that created for the earlier editions, because they do absolutely apply to this deck as well. In fact, it's exactly because with the earlier editions, I was using them for pathworking, different forms of creative visualization techniques in order to expand my psychic horizons and to continue or expand to build my inner temple. Because of that type of ritual or occult work that I did, that inspired the particular way I approached illustrating the full color Revelation edition, which I hope you can see. Right? It was very much about world building when it came to SKT Revelation edition. It really mattered what the details of the world in the background setting looked like. I really tried to get down into the micro level, the atomic level of how the artwork looked, because I was building worlds that an occult practitioner could potentially use to augment their own inner temple, and also to create worlds for these particular spirits to occupy and to give them essentially a home. So every card, every key is a well-furnished home for each spirit that is occupying it. For example, in the Emperor card that I just pulled, even though what we see right now is he pretty much takes up all of the space and you can't see what's behind him, you do know that this is a gateway, a portal of some kind, and it mirrors the one in the Empress card. But when I was drawing it, some of you might remember it because I animated the entire process of creating this card. So if you see that animated process, the background was fully formed. I created an entire world behind the Emperor and then put the subject matter in the foreground. So the final result printed on the card, you pretty much just see him occupying most of the space or most of the composition. But the drawing I did had multiple depths and multiple layers behind that just now is no longer visible, but I know they are there. The Emperor, the spirit of the Emperor, knows that world is there as well, and it's a furnished world for him to occupy and thrive in. I think for a lot of us today in the modern world, with the type of upbringing and the type of world we're exposed to, the world we live in, our community, it makes it very difficult for us to see the benefits of something like pathworking, because it just feels like you're making it up. It feels like you're acting like a child and creating like fictional friends and fictional worlds and making up a story in your head that you don't even get to put down and publish as a novel, right? For me, I believe that there is a physical world and a psychic spiritual world that run parallel, and they're connected to each other. And the health of one reflects the health of the other. The health of the other reflects the health of what is visible. And so a lot of the times you encounter, for example, a little small example, we encounter so many situations where science, because of us, not science itself. Science itself is unlimited, just like magic. The problem is our understanding, the place we're at in terms of our understanding of science is limited. And in that moment, we are unable to diagnose a particular situation. We are unable to figure out what's really going on. Why is there a problem here? Why is something broken? Why is something dysfunctional? And this is where occultists can come into play and answer those questions, because they're seeing beyond. They're seeing a world that is connected to the physical world, the psychic world. So I believe that if you want something very mundane and materialistic, like financial success, wealth, prosperity, fame, fortune, reputation, glory, any of these things, one way, not the only, but one way is to work on it from behind, work on it from the route of the spiritual, the psychic. When you build up your inner temple, the psychic inner temple, and you really work on developing the details of that world, it translates into material physical achievement in the superficial world. One of the reasons I dislike unscripted impromptu videos like this is because then I forget huge swaths of subject matter, and then I have to re-record on different days. I want to take a moment to talk about and comment on what I mean when I refer to an inner temple. Just like a church, a shrine, a physical structure that is a temple in this material world where you go to talk to divinity, you go there to talk to God, you go there to pray and have communion or communicate with deity and your concept of the supernatural. So it's similar in the sense that an inner temple is a building structure, an astral structure that you construct where the unconscious mind can download or upload information, and the conscious mind can then access it. So it's this medium, this place where the unconscious and the conscious of your inner self can meet. This is also why the concept of archetypes is so important in this mystical concept, using Jungian terminology. And one way to re-examine this concept of archetypes is to consider gods and goddesses, deity. In its simplest form, the inner temple is a mental construct where your higher self can meet and confer with your aware self. It's a place in the mind that lends itself better than not having an inner temple to passing information on between the unconscious part of your mind to the conscious. You may have heard of the concept method of loci. I conceptualize the inner temple as not unlike the method of loci. The method of loci is a visualization technique where you mentally construct a palace, building, or any geographic location that you know well. So it needs to be very well detailed. And you place items you need to remember or memorize in certain corners or locations of this mental construct. When you return to this place and walk through it, you'll be able to retrieve those memories. The method of loci is a concept you'll find in both psychology and neurobiology, rhetoric, logic, and philosophy. The occultist's inner temple is pretty much exactly that, but rather than subjects you need to memorize or recall, it's a mentally constructed church, shrine, sanctuary, well, temple. It's an inner temple. You are constructing a sanctuary that your conscious mind, your ordinary awareness can better commune with and receive insights from your higher self, the inner God image that Carl Jung talked about. Constructing an inner temple is like constructing my home base, a very powerful and well fortified home base, castle, if you will, in the astral realm so that I can better traverse the astral realm while feeling like I have a home base there. Does that even make sense? There are dangers to it if you don't build with wisdom. I agree with a lot of the cautionary tales about working with the occult. I know some, oh, why do people say those negative things about occult works? I agree with it because I feel like if you don't have the wisdom, if you don't have the humility, if you don't have the guardrails, if you don't have a really qualified and strong mentor of some kind who knows how to interfere, who can enter into the astral world in the event that you're in trouble, come in and fish you out of your own trouble if you go too deep. So having all these different types of guardrails and safety measures is important. This is why they talk a lot about mentorship and apprenticeship in the occult practitioner world. So you know how we talk about if you physically travel the world, and even if it's not about physical travel of the world, if you are interested in research, especially in this day and age, who says you need to have boatloads of money to be able to travel the world? Literally, right? You can have the interest and the motivation to learn about other cultures. Something as simple as watching videos and reading texts from own voices, and just, it depends on your curiosity, your level of curiosity and initiative. It doesn't have to be literally you have to fly to France or you have to go to Morocco, right? There are ways to learn more about other cultures, to enrich your understanding of the world. The more you understand other cultures, the more diverse your own knowledge base is, the more powerful you are, the better you are at decision making. You have just so much more to draw from in terms of wisdom and insight. And so that's kind of where the inspiration of this specific edition of SKT came from. It was me during the pandemic exploring into own voices, books published by academic presses, and really exploring different cultures and different religions from different times and places, and using that to create an astral world that my astral temple, my inner temple, is placed in. So a lot of times what occult practitioners do is, you've heard this before, building the inner temple, and that's very important. So what I believe, what I propose as an occultist is, not only is it important to really be specific and detailed and thoughtful about the architecture of your inner temple. Once you have built that inner temple, that's your home, right? It's just like your house, doing the interior decor of your home, doing home improvements in your house, housekeeping in your home. It is imperative to think about the community and the setting of that inner temple and what value that brings to you as the occupant of the inner temple. And one way to expand upon the landscape around your inner temple is forms of pathworking. It's forms of just something as simple as studying different religions and different cultures. One of the reasons I'm a little hesitant to go too detailed step by step in terms of instructions for pathworking and craft and magic is because I'm afraid that people will project a particular false level of expertise onto me and assume that the only way to do something is whatever I'm saying. And if what they were thinking of doing is totally in opposition to what I just said, what I blurted out of my mouth, that could cause them to think twice about following their own intuition. And they will try to do something my way rather than their own way, which will lead them astray. So when it comes to these sort of occult oriented instructions, I'm very careful and also a little bit like, I don't know how to talk about these things, because the true advice is very generic and cliche. Know yourself, follow your intuition, follow your gut instincts. It's so cliche that you don't even know what those phrases mean, and yet nothing could be truer when you're talking about occult practice. In my opinion, I think it's a lot easier and more productive to teach rudimentary basics that seem very not spiritual, not psychic, not occult. Things like read the damn book of maps, right? Just go through the entries in there, and then what interests you, what you just can't shake off in terms of wanting to know more. You go into the back of the book and you look up the citations that I offer. A lot of the times I used scholarly publications and doctoral theses that you can download for free from ResearchGate or JSTOR. I don't know if JSTOR needs a paid subscription. I'm sorry if I don't know that. But there are a lot of places where you can download doctoral theses and peer-reviewed journal articles in social science, anthropology journals by academics who know what the heck they're talking about, writing on these subjects. And a lot of times they get into mysticism and religion and mythology, and those are great places to start. You don't just have to go on Amazon and buy books. You can definitely look at, in fact, I actually prefer looking in papers because they're more, I don't want to say cutting edge, but I just feel like they push the envelope a lot more than books. Books tend to stay a little bit more conservative in terms of their findings or how they like to talk about subjects. Hi, it's me again, or still. I'm wearing different clothes because it's a different day or evening, and I realized I didn't flesh out everything I wanted to say about astral journeying and pathworking, but I thought it might help to just talk very candidly about it and very personally in terms of my more unique, not unique as in I'm special, unique as in this might be in disagreement or in contrast, even opposition to what other people might say about pathworking versus astral journeying. So when I say astral journeying, here's what I believe. This is the physical world that we live in. This physical world, there's like an astral dimension that makes it sound so freaking crazy and woo-woo, and it's not, it's just energy. It's more mundane in the way I perceive it than the way it's coming across through my words when I say, oh, it's another dimension. That sounds nuts. There's an astral equivalent or astral dimension, plane, something that sits or that's superimposed over the physical material world, and they're interlocked. They relate to each other. I think one way to think of it is it's like a spirit essence in your body versus your physical body. Right? Even something like emotions, if you're emotionally unwell, it can result in psychosomatic symptoms. You can have actual physical health complications that are the direct result of being unwell emotionally. So that emotional dimension is this what I'm talking about. There's that emotional dimension to your physical body, that kind of thing. Like that's what I'm talking about here. There's an astral thing that runs parallel to the physical world that we live on. So astral journeying is, instead of like getting on a plane or a bus and physically going to different places in this world, there's a presumption that your mind, that this astral you is connected to the astral world, and you can kind of connect into it, dial into it, and traverse that astral realm and visit different places, but you're visiting the astral like dimension or equivalent to the physical world. Okay. Pathworking, I think of that as ideological travel. There's a construct, more intellectualized is probably the better way to put it. So the astral realm, I might liken to the emotional plane of who you are. If that's the case, then this concept of pathworking, this intellectualized construct, is going to be the mind component, the thought component, the logos component to the physical body. And so mind, body, and spirit are all connected in that same way that the physical world, the astral world, and a construct of some kind, an ideological construct of some kind that is a blueprint explaining the architecture of the astral and the physical world combined. So the third, this idea of pathworking, is to traverse an ideological lattice or framework that explains the first two that I was talking about, the astral world and the physical world. So that's how I conceptualize pathworking versus astral journeying. And that's what I mean by it's not really a textbook meaning. I don't think people think of it this way either. So it may in fact be in direct opposition to what most people agree would be astral journeying versus pathworking. But those are just some of my thoughts. Okay, so who cares? Why care about any of this? The reason I think that these exercises of the mind, these visualization techniques are imperative for the occultist is because they relate to each other. Things that happen in one of these realms doesn't just stay there. They have a direct correlation of some kind. They have an impact on the equivalents in the other realms. So if you're an occultist and you astral journey somewhere and you actually interact with animations, spirits, whatever you want to call it, chi, shen, if you interact in some way in that realm, and you're not just a passive bystander, like you make changes, there's something that happens, then that causes something directly to occur in the physical material world. Likewise, things that happen in the material world, for example, collective amounts of hatred, collective amounts of any kind of energy that's generated in a very sort of collected, shared way. That's very powerful magic, like extremely powerful magic done by people who don't know what the fuck they're doing because it's usually done by the mindless masses. So suddenly mindless masses are performing magic at really high sophisticated levels with no wisdom, no intelligence, and no awareness of what they're doing. Super dangerous. And so things like that happen in the physical world, things that we as humans do, can have an impact on that spiritual world, that astral world. Just my beliefs. Because the original intention for the Spirit Keepers Tarot is for it to be an occult deck. It's created by an occultist for the occultist. And as a direct result of that, I had a lot of considerations and I had to really think about how I wanted to approach that. What I did was this is my thinking, right? And again, I keep saying these caveats and disclaimers, take from it what you will, right? I just want to express to you where I was coming from, how much of it you believe, how much of it is even true, how I approached it at least. I can at least talk to my intentions. I can speak to my intentions. I knew this was a deck that was by an occultist for occultists. With that said, what I was thinking was, okay, I am going to produce the absolute most powerful occult tool, occult technology I am capable of, create it, and then I'm going to put around it guardrails and basically program it in a way that makes it safe, 100% safe. Nothing's ever 100% safe. But you know what I mean? Like I really thought seriously about how can I do this responsibly as an occultist within my worldview, within my personal gnosis. How can I produce a deck that is allegedly as powerful of an occult technology as I am capable of producing, and yet at the same time is created with enough safety and security measures that any bloke, any total beginner can pick up this deck, James, my husband, like anybody can pick up this deck, tinker with it, and, it'll be fine, right? So I really thought about producing guardrails. And at the same time, even though there's guardrails and safety security measures from that psycho-magical standpoint, at the same time, I do believe they can be easily broken or hacked into and unlocked by any practitioner worth his or her weight in salt, right? Like this, if you know kind of sort of what you're doing, you're able to break through that, hack it as they say, and work around the so-called security measures. But if you are a total beginner, I do believe, and what my intention was to take that responsibility very seriously. And I spent a lot of time thinking about the security measures, which is why you do see so many images and likenesses of beneficent gods and goddesses, celestial realms from various cultures. And even while I was depicting those, just the amount of ceremonial magic, ritual work, and even personal purification, ritual purification that I did just to make sure I can say honestly and sincerely, I did everything I could to make sure there were guardrails in place and there were spirit protectors, mentors that would come through and assist anybody who handles this deck. That was very rambly. If you've read one or two or 10 Golden Dawn books, looked into a lot of what Western ceremonial magicians and occultists write about when it comes to the tarot, there seems to be this recurring sentiment that divination, fortune telling, whether or not the occultist makes a distinction between the two, and it does kind of differ from individual to individual, you will see it among the texts. They all seem to unanimously acknowledge that even at the divination and fortune telling are at some low level of working with the tarot, and that a true occultist, like basically anybody who is truly trying to ascend and achieve communion with their holy guardian angel, or even just understand their higher self a little bit better, the tarot is more of a tool. They'll talk about the tarot being a tool for pathworking, astral journeying, all meditations. If you are asking me for my opinion, the most important way that the Spirit Keepers Tarot Revelation Edition can be used as an occultist's tool is the deck and the book of maps combined, and even the little white booklet. As a tool, I hope it will help you to arrive at your own understanding of the Prisca Theologia. I wanted to read to you at least a couple of snippets from the Book of Maps. If that sounds very boring to you, there are timestamps in the video description box, so you can go ahead and skip this. I'm reading from the chapter, Cultural Integration and the Prisca Theologia. Medieval philosophers and mystics on the quest to memorialize a single universal theology searched beyond the borderlines of their own traditions. While their doctrines were based largely in Christian and Jewish mysticism, metastasized by the integration of Platonic philosophy and Sufism, the quest for that universal theology led these thinkers to consider Hinduism, Buddhism, and even a return to unearth the deeper heritage of their own pagan roots. Cultural integration is conceptual alchemy that blends what had been separate artistic, intuitive paths of wisdom into one unified system of evolved thought. During the Renaissance, the theory of Prisca Theologia evolved from the merger of Hellenistic corpora, the collection of written texts on Greek mystery traditions and cults, and Kabbalistic literature, both of which were filtered through a Christian perspective. And yet the origins of the Prisca Theologia concept, in that a first theology or philosophia perennis, an eternal philosophy, has its roots in Islamic thought. Saravardi, full name Shahab Adin Yaha ibn Habash im Amraka. I'm very sorry, I'm going to butcher this. Amriak as Surawardi was the founder of Illuminationism, or Wisdom of the Rising Light, a philosophical and esoteric mystery school from the Islamic Golden Age that espoused the first principles of light, a concept likened to what Eliphas Levi would later refer to as the astral light, how it manifests as intellectualism, as angels, as divine genius, and as reason. He blended Islamic thought with occult emanationism, Zoroastrian angelology, Hermeticism. Saravardi referred to Hermes. It's Hermes. I say Hermes because I was also in fashion once upon a time. Hermes. I'm very sorry. It's because I'm from the fashion world. To Hermes as the father of philosophers and Neoplatonism. His school of thought also centered on intuitive mystical experiences for achieving gnosis. Eventually, Saravardi was charged with crimes of heresy and executed. It wasn't until the 15th century, during the Italian Renaissance, that pursuit of the Prisca Theologia took popular hold in Western Europe. with one significant milestone occurring around 1463 when Cosimo de' Medici took a keen interest in the Corpus Hermeticum and commissioned a translation by Marsilio Ficino, a Neoplatonist, scholar, physician, astrologer, and Catholic priest. This early manifestation of the Prisca Theologia sought to reveal a common denominator among Egyptian, Greek, Jewish, and Christian thought. Okay, I'm done reading to you. What I truly hope is the most important use for the Spirit Keepers Tarot Revelation Edition is as a tool for helping you understand the Prisca Theologia. And a part of me also really hopes that when you use this deck, when you study with this deck, that you experience these incredible synchronicities, little baby miracles, until you believe in God, not some Abrahamic God, not even, I'm not saying Buddha, but God, light, a pantheistic view. I hope this deck of cards will help you to believe in Spinoza's God.